Hi, good evening, and welcome to this 38th Legislative District live telephone town hall with State Senator June Robinson and State Representatives Mary Fosse and Julio Cortes. My name is Lily, and I will be your host tonight. Thank you for taking the time to join us. Today is the 67th day of this 105-day session. We're calling you because your state legislators want to give you an update and answer your questions. I'll now turn it over to your legislators for some opening remarks. Let's start with Senator June Robinson.
Good evening. This is State Senator June Robinson. Really happy to be joining you all this evening. Thanks for picking up and chatting with us for a little bit. I am very honored to represent the people of the 38th Legislative District in the State Senate, where I sit on the Healthcare Committee and I serve as the chair of the Ways and Means Committee. So a lot of my time here in Olympia is focused on working on our state operating budget, which we will be coming out publicly on Monday, this upcoming Monday morning. So that has consumed most of my time. I have a lot of the bills that I've introduced are related to the state budget. I did have a health care bill that was focused on the corporate practice of medicine. Unfortunately, that bill has not advanced, but I will continue to work on that issue in upcoming sessions.
Thank you. Please press 0 on your phone right now to ask a question. And here is Representative Mary Fosse.
Hi, I'm State Representative Mary Fosse, one of the two state reps for the 38th Legislative District. I live in Everett. Committees-wise, I serve on capital budget. I'm the vice chair of labor, and I also serve on community safety. Well, and I have one more, consumer protection and business. I'm also the deputy floor leader, and policy-wise, my focus is this year on workforce issues. I have some consumer protection policy and focus on apprenticeship and child labor safety, and my budget priorities have been geared towards supportive housing, affordable housing, and a lot of child care resources.
Thank you. Please remember to press 0 on your phone right now to ask a question. And here is Representative Julio Cortes.
Hi, everyone. Representative Julio Cortes here. For me, it's an honor to be your state representative. I want to thank you all for taking a little bit of time out of your evening today to join us and ask some important questions, hopefully, of us and where our state's heading. I am the vice chair of the Early Learning and Human Services Committee. I also sit on the Economic Development, Technology, and Veterans Committee. And I sit on Appropriations, which is the committee that deals with a lot of our budget in the House side. Having spent about 10 years working with at-risk and homeless youth and families in San Luis County by working with a great organization called the Coon House, some of my bigger priorities are around breaking the cycle of homelessness in our communities and supporting our human services work that we do statewide. The last 6 years, I've been operating as the Economic Development and Marketing Manager for the City of Everett, and so economic development is also a big piece of the type of work that I try to do here at the legislature. Fun fact for me this legislature, I'm the World Cup liaison for our Technology and Economic Development Committee. The World Cup will take place in 2026 in June and July. I think it's going to be a very fun, but also a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for us to generate a lot of revenue with 750,000 people from international markets coming to our state, and they all need a place to sleep, somewhere to eat, and somewhere to drink. So looking forward to your questions tonight.
If you are just joining us, this is a live telephone town hall event with your lawmakers from the 38th District, Senator June Robinson, Representative Mary Fosse, and Representative Julio Cortes. We sent you a survey so you could send us questions in advance, so we're going to start there as we get the live questions going. So our first question is from Karen, and Karen asks, actually, this question is a lot of questions. Several people sent questions related to this issue, but this one is like the most complete, so I'm going to read it. What are you doing to protect our communities from federal destabilization and fascist violence? People rely on Social Security, HED, SNAP, citizenship, and many other federal systems just to survive and meet their basic needs. How are you encouraging and supporting our local community's resilience, and how are you protecting those being targeted by fascism, such as people of color, immigrants, trans, and otherwise queer people, disabled people, homeless people? Many of us are already suffering in large ways. How much more do we have to go through?
Okay, well, this is Senator June Robinson. Thank you for the question, and I know that these issues are really top of mind for so many people in the 38th Legislative District and across our state, and honestly across our country. They are the big issues of this moment. They are very much front of mind for all of us here in the legislature. You know, we want Washington to remain a state that welcomes immigrants, is protective of people who have disabilities of any sort, our LGBTQ community, and anyone. We want everyone to feel welcome in Washington State and in our communities, and certainly in the communities of the 38th Legislative District. You know, some of the cuts that may be coming, we don't know, from the federal government are very honestly going to be hard for us to mitigate because, you know, the state resources and federal resources are just on completely different scales. But we are, as we write our budgets, as we pass policy this year, we are keeping in mind how we can protect the resources that we have, protect the policies that we have, and do our best to create a safety for our communities and help protect from the worst that may be coming from our federal administration.
Next up, we have another internet question. Care is essential to our economy and communities. Clients and families are experiencing growing shortages and delays in care. Caregivers deserve living wages and benefits that keep up with the cost of living. Can we count on you to support fully funding the home care rate, funding nursing homes, and increasing taxes on the wealthiest to pay for these essential services?
Representative Mary Fosse here. I absolutely agree. Caregivers are essential in our communities, and we would be lost without them. Our economy would cease to function without the work that they do. We do have that priority in mind when we are doing our budgeting process, but I do not serve on the Appropriations Committee. And the budget proposal, again, will be coming out Monday. And once that goes public, we can reevaluate more what we're looking at as far as where we are putting our dollars to prioritize. It is a very tough budget year, as you heard from my colleagues on that. However, you will hear a lot of our colleagues here in the House, and I'm sure in the Senate, that want to make sure that when we're looking at our taxation structure, that we are making sure that essential services and folks like caregivers are prioritized, making sure that the wealthiest of the state are paying their fair share.
So, next up, another internet question. This might be the last one before we start taking live questions. Why aren't the DUI penalties harsher? Drugs and intoxication need to be addressed. I had a proposal a couple years back, and it was dismissed. Too many wrongful deaths need to be changed.
Yeah, great question and comment. This is Representative Julio Cortes. So, I absolutely agree that the consequences of impaired driving are absolutely devastating to our communities. I think that almost every time I look online and follow our news, we consistently are hearing about, another car accident, and most of the time there's been impaired driving involved. We are currently looking, both in the Senate and the House, on a couple safety measures that I think are going to make a big difference. Even at the local level, we have a Target Zero initiative in Everett, which is aiming to eliminate traffic deaths through enhanced education and enforcement, which I think is a great balance to strike. I do appreciate this issue being raised. I think driving is one of the most dangerous activities that we all do on a daily basis as a community. So making sure that we address this by including more education for our young drivers is going to be important. Investing in safety measures for some of our roadways like Highway 2, which is, the city of Everett, our district is the entryway to Highway 2, and it's poorly illuminated. It's a two-way highway. It's something that we need to really look at, but we are definitely pushing initiatives forward to not only listen to our community, but like with initiatives like Target Zero, looking to take real action to address this very critical and devastating issue with our families, because over the last maybe 3 months, I've been hearing from folks in our district who have been impacted by this, losing both parents and or children, and these are preventable deaths that we see too often in our community. So again, Target Zero, Everett, I'll make sure to send some information on my next newsletter on that, but we'll keep working on this.
Thank you, folks. Please press 0 on your phone right now if you have a question for your state lawmakers. Next, we have Peter with a live question about rent stabilization. Hi, Peter. Can you hear me?
Yes. Thank you for taking my question. My question is this. Rent control, I don't think is necessarily the answer for small-time landlords. You have corporate interests that own hundreds of units, 50-unit buildings, 40-unit buildings, 296-unit buildings. They use algorithms and computer programs to determine the highest amount of rent that they can extort out of tenants. Small-time landlords, and I put myself in that category, we don't do that, okay? My tenants in the past have had rent increases of $25. If there's a major expense, maybe $50 a month with plenty of notice. I see that this rental cap now of increases of 7%, it forces me to raise my rents on my tenants 7%, even if I don't want to. Why? So I can stay, the value of my property is determined by the rent that I can get for it. And for that reason, it's not nice to have to do that with my tenants. I spoke with one tenant and he said, in reference to last year, I'm surprised that the rent increase was only $25. And I said, well, that's why I do all the repairs, to keep the costs down. What are we going to be doing in Olympia to protect the small-time landlord instead of taxing us to death? My insurance rates have skyrocketed. The property taxes keep going up. Repairs are through the roof. You want a contractor to come in, it's $125 just to show up at the door before doing any repairs. I'd like to see what could be done to protect the small-time landlord.
Great. Thank you so much for that question. So there's a few questions in there that I'll try to address. Again, this is Julio Cortes. So the rent stabilization bills is kind of aimed more at the larger landlords. I believe, and I'll get a correction here if I'm wrong, but I believe there is a limit on how many units you would be having to own in order to qualify for this 7%. But we do have another bill too that's addressing that algorithm that you mentioned. That's going to stop these corporations or larger entities from really colluding to set rent rates. So that bill is already in play. We'll try to get that number for you here soon. And you also kind of stated that it's forcing you to raise the rent 7%. So with the bill that is moving forward, it doesn't force you to do it. You can actually bank it for the following year for a few times. So we've been hearing from so many people out there that this bill is going to really create a big change. I think in the city of Everett alone, around 51% of the folks that live there are renters. We're not just, as far as Washington State, we're not just pushing for this rent stabilization bill, right? The last couple of years, we've also pushed a lot of bills out of Olympia that are going to allow us to build more. And it's a multi-pronged approach that we're trying to address here, right? The issue of homelessness continues to rise, and it's because folks just can't simply afford where they live. Every time I think the rent goes up $100, there's a percentage of households that aren't able to afford that anymore. So I think this bill, we found it a pretty good balance. That 7% increase, we talked to small landlords as well. One of our state representatives owns, I believe, 10 units, and he brought in his books that we were able to take a look at. And Representative Mary Fosse is also a small landlord, and she allowed us to kind of look at her books. And 7% was something that they really communicated to us that they were able to cover their annual costs that come along with being a landlord. So, it's a tough bill. I think that it's going to do a lot of good in our communities. It's going to affect millions of households right away. And I think that with this bill passing, we're going to see a huge dent in our homelessness issue that we're continuously seeing out in our communities.
Representative Mary Fosse here. Just to add on to that, I really appreciate Rep. Cortes's summary and also mentioning all the other policies that we've also been working on with the multi-pronged approach. As a very, very small, landlord, I had similar concerns originally when the concept of the rent stabilization came forward. And as this bill was previously run, there's been a lot of changes and adjustments to it. It's very difficult to kind of identify when somebody is a small-time landlord versus when they are higher above. So I don't think this final version that passed off the floor in the House ended up differing on that. But we still ended up with a large amount of small-time landlords that actually supported the way it's currently written. When you have a new tenant coming in, they are not going to be subject to the previous tenant's rates in that cap. So in between tenants, that was important for me. So if I got a new tenant coming in, that I was not stuck at renting at a certain level. It's that 7% on that current tenant that you have from year to year. And most of the landlords that we spoke to had no interest in raising the rent beyond that 7% cap. And right now what we're seeing in our community, and I know especially in my neighborhood, is that a lot of our neighbors are essentially being kicked out of our communities because they can't afford to live there anymore. It's happening to our seniors, it's happening to people in these manufactured home communities, and we're losing our neighbors. And some of them are going homeless. And so the stabilization approach here is trying to be very mindful of the small-time landlords who just want to, work and use that equity and move up to that next class in life, and then also all of the neighbors that are renting so that they don't go homeless.
Folks, please press 0 if you have a question for your lawmakers tonight. Next up is an internet question. What is the status of the budget stipulation that cuts national board stipends for MBCT teachers? I am currently pursuing national board certification, and I'm worried that my cohort and I won't get stipend that we worked so hard for.
Yes, well, thank you for that question, and most importantly, thank you for teaching. It's a very noble profession. We've all benefited from teachers. None of us would be where we are today if we hadn't had teachers along the way. And secondly, thank you for pursuing national board certification. We absolutely know that data shows, especially in high poverty schools, that it does make a difference to have a national board certified teacher in the classroom. Unfortunately, we're in a very difficult budget situation this year, and we've looked across the entire budget for areas of potential savings. As you probably are aware, Governor Inslee did identify the National Board stipends as, one possibility for budget savings. As chair of the Ways and Means Committee, I introduced that bill. It was part of Governor Inslee's budget, and it's a common practice for the budget chairs to just automatically introduce the bills that were put forward in the governor's budget. As I hope you are aware, the proposal that we had a public hearing on in the Ways and Means Committee did not completely eliminate the National Board stipend, but did reduce it. And we are continuing to look at that as potential savings, and also have heard from a lot of teachers like yourself who have given very heartfelt concerns about the loss of income to their families. So it's definitely not an easy decision that we will be making. And thank you for weighing in. Again, I and all of my colleagues have heard from many teachers. I recognize that this would be asking some teachers to take a reduction in their take-home pay. I have pledged that if we do need to make this reduction, that there will be time allowed for teachers who are currently receiving the National Board bonus to make those adjustments to their family budgets. So thanks again for all that you do and for the question.
Thank you. Folks, please press 0 if you have a question for your lawmakers. And next we have Mustafa on the phone. Hi, Mustafa.
Hello. Thank you for the opportunity to definitely say. First, I want to say, as a resident of Marysville and the chief program officer of a nonprofit, I want to say thank you to Senator Robinson for supporting the special education. Specifically, thank you for supporting SB 5263, the big special education bill, and for including early support for infants and toddlers, or ESID. We were thrilled that the Senate passed this bill with ESID included, and hope the House will do the same. Now that the bill is in the House, I am respectfully urging all the state representatives to pass SB 5263 in the strongest possible term, because this is an opportunity to provide the youngest Washingtonians with the opportunity to grow at a pace and to receive all kinds of support that will support their brain development within the first 3 years of life. Can we count on you to support the full continuum of this special education bill?
Hi, Mustafa. This is Senator Robinson. I did vote for that bill as it came off the Senate floor. I believe it was heard in House Appropriations this week. I don't know if they're going to plan to move that soon or not, but yes, the special ed bill as it currently sits is a comprehensive bill that would provide significant resources to our K-12 schools to help ensure that they have state funding to cover the cost of special ed. Right now, many of our school districts are using their local levies to supplement state funding in that regard, and we're hoping that we can help with that this year. It's a challenging year to be making this big investment, but we do know that our schools need it, our kids need it, and as you point out, our very youngest children who need support would also get that additional support through the bill, which does contain additional funding for the ESID, which I can't remember what that is right now, but it's for the very tiny little kids who need extra help. So hopefully we can make significant strides in that direction this year.
This is Representative Julio Cortes, and so I sit on appropriations. We did hear this bill just yesterday, and are going to look forward to having some conversations on it. Again, having spent some time working with at-risk and homeless youth, there were times where these youth had little brothers and sisters that really benefited from quality education, and this is a bill that I think is incredibly important to make sure that the youngest members of our community are supported. I see it as a great investment for our community, just because the lessons that are learned at that age are incredibly important for development, for social skills, and I believe by investing in this type of law, we're going to be able to support a lot more folks moving forward. So We're still going to have a lot of conversations on this bill and many others. I think that there's a lot of support for this funding. I think every member in both the House and Senate wants to support this bill. We are in a very difficult situation at the moment, but it's a priority that I think I see in a lot of our members on both sides.
Thank you so much.
Representative Fosse here, just chiming in real quick. I think everything that the speaker said, I share those similar views, and in hopes that these types of things, removing that 16% cap, will really benefit and help. So, in support of it, we'll see if we can get House floor. Thanks.
Thank you. We have another internet question. I believe Senate Bill 5576 is an unnecessary additional tax on tourism that will impact short-term rental hosts. Most of my Airbnb guests dine out for nearly every meal we're visiting, already contributing to the local economy. Have you considered alternative tax solutions that would be more reasonable and less harmful to small business owners like myself?
Yeah, that's a great question. I absolutely understand, concerns about this bill and potential impacts on short-term rentals. The bill did pass the Senate and is currently in House Finance Committee. Although I don't sit in that committee, I will ensure to keep an eye on that bill just because it's really important. In the meantime, I do want to say, I am working with our World Cup liaisons and Airbnb to find ways to support small business owners like yourself. Again, the FIFA World Cup is going to be huge, and we're going to need you and many other business owners like yourself to make sure that we find a place for 750,000 people to lay their heads. I think, a balanced approach to this issue. We do need folks like you to be taken care of and be supported. The work that I'm doing with the World Cup liaisons and Airbnb are going to ensure that you have the support that you need in preparation for the World Cup, which may include some promotional opportunities for you. I will also continue to, listen to you. You are the one that's having, the issue. So sending us information, participating here tonight, I think is very important. So I thank you for that. It is a local option, so I think that's something that's going to be very helpful to you. So we'll stay kind of connected on that. But, again, I understand the concerns on this. I think that I value your feedback, and we'll stay connected on it.
The bill, as it passed the Senate, as Representative Cortes says, it's a local option. So cities and counties can choose to use this tax. In some communities, their housing stock is very affected by the number of homes that have been bought and are used as short-term rentals. This is not intended to affect people who own the home and live in the home and rent a room, for example. This is for folks who buy a house and then use it strictly as a short-term rental. And we're asking them to pay a small tax on that to help support affordable housing efforts in those communities.
Thank you. We have a poll. Which issue do you feel most affects your daily life? Press 1 if it is cost of housing, 2 if it is cost of basic needs, 3 if it's education funding, and 4 if it's transportation. Again, which issue most affects your daily life? 1, cost of housing. Press 2 for cost of basic needs. Press 3 for education funding, and press 4 for transportation. Okay, next up, Bob from Marysville, about the budget deficit. Hi, Bob.
How you doing? Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead and ask your question, please.
All right, this is the first time using a telephone town hall, so bear with me. But my concern is that the Governor Ferguson mentioned on February 27th his outline of some reductions and some efficiencies in the upcoming, in this current deficit. What I'd like to know from the three of you in our 38th district is what do you see what we can do to reduce the deficit without trying to tax us and tax all these people in Washington State. I'm really concerned that we, as a state or any of the states in our union, we keep adding taxes to find ways to deal with the shortfall. Is there other ways we can do to efficiently look at some of our departments and find out, are we creating some extra waste? So I'd like to hear from the three of you. What are your thoughts and vision on that?
Thanks, Bob, for that question. This is Representative Julio Cortes. Well, I think we're actually going to have to find a balanced approach to this, right? We're definitely looking very, very heavily into all departments in Washington State and seeing where we can cut and reduce, quote unquote waste, as you mentioned. But, that's something that we've been working on for a little bit. More are going to come. But ultimately, we are also going to be needing to look at revenue. And, I want to make sure that everybody understands that the type of revenue that we are looking for is going to be for folks that, the chair of our finance committee actually put it in a great way. If you're receiving a paycheck, you're really not going to be affected by these taxes, right? Folks that we are trying to make sure pay their fair share are the wealthiest among us, and they're usually not collecting a paycheck. It's investments that they're getting paid out of. So I want to make sure that everybody understands that, the average Joe or Bob, if you will, is not going to be really affected by this. But ultimately, we will have to use progressive revenue opportunities as well as cuts. The wealth gap is continuing to grow in Washington State, and that is because our tax system has been upside down for decades. And this is our opportunity to make sure that we can kind of correct that a little bit. And right now we're in a pretty tough position with $12 billion in the hole, and this new revenue is going to help us get out of it. But I want to make sure people also understand and remember that once we are out of this hole, which we will be, it's something that happens to every state, we will have that revenue there. So make sure that we continue to invest in the systems and programs that our communities need, like schools, and making sure that our most vulnerable populations get taken care of.
Yes, and this is Senator Robinson. As the lead budget writer for the Senate, I can assure you that I have spent the last many months combing through line by line of our state budget, taking into consideration all the reduction options that were offered by both Governor Inslee, Governor Ferguson, and our state agencies. So you will, I'm confident that you will see significant reductions across the board in state agencies and programs in the budgets that come out in both the House and the Senate. However, we must make sure that our communities continue to have the supports that they need so that more people are not hungry or homeless or without health care. And so that is the balance that we're trying to strike, to not go really far backwards in the safety and protection of the most vulnerable in our communities and everyday citizens, but at the same time, not, as Representative Cortes said, trying to find that balance between reductions to state spending as well as progressive revenue that does not harm working families.
Representative Mary Fosse here. I couldn't agree more with both of my colleagues here. I think we share similar values with you, Bob. And I got to admit, I share your concerns on that. We do have rising needs and higher inflation and slowing revenue growth, and we have to do something about that to maintain our basic services while still looking responsive to programs. And so I'm really glad that my colleagues here sit on the committees that they do, and that we're going to have some more revenue options that come out to kind of balance that growing wealth gap. So we have folks paying their fair share.
Thank you. Please press 0 if you have a question for your lawmakers tonight. Next, we're going with Abigail, who had an internet question. I read a really disturbing story about a boy who lost both legs in a work accident. So first, why are teenagers working? Is it like school credit? And secondly, I heard there was a bill, but I don't know what happened. So how are we protecting kids when they take part-time jobs?
Thank you for the question. That was actually my child labor safety bill. It passed off the House floor. It was bipartisan with a lot of negotiation. Essentially, what we're looking at is there's an increasing amount of youth workers in this state, and what we've noticed with that is there's also an increase in job site injuries. And in 2023, there was 750 workers under the age of 18 that reported job site injuries. In 2024, that went up to 869. And really what this bill is looking at is we have very outdated penalty structure. Essentially, the civil infraction for harming or killing a youth on a job site can be as low as $250. So what this bill does is it looks at different penalty structure. And as I said, it is bipartisan. We narrowed it down to look at the most egregious violations and making sure that where we're putting our tax dollars when it comes to these public works jobs, they're going to good employers that are minding youth labor laws and not the ones that are violating them. So it's a pretty great bill that's headed over to the Senate. So I hope my colleague over here will support it, because a lot of work went into it, negotiating it, making sure that its intent is being fulfilled and just impacting those most egregious offenders of youth labor rights.
Thank you. We have about 20 minutes left of this call, so if you have a question, please press 0 right now. And our next question is from Karen, who has a question about federal funding cuts. Karen?
Can you hear me? I unmuted it, sorry.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. I have been hearing on the news that the current administration cut $800 million out of Medicaid, and out of spite has refused to give us federal funding to our state, which is 30% of our budget, because we won't disallow transgenders and et cetera. I'm not a transgender, but and they are working on cutting this money to staff Social Security offices, so that it makes it seem like Social Security, the Social Security Department is not able to do a worthy job, so might as well close them. And they're planning on cutting Medicare too. I'm wondering, what I'm asking is, does that end up putting a burden then on our state, and how would, and including food stamps, they want to cut off food stamps. How is our state going to be able to deal with that?
Thank you for that question. This is Representative Julio Cortes. So, it's a very scary time for everyone, I think, in the country. And, as state legislators, unfortunately, we don't have direct authority over federal policies. However, we can enact state laws to protect our residents as much as we can from those harmful federal actions and government overreach that you just described. I can say members of the legislature are working closely with our Attorney General, Nick Brown, to prepare, legal strategies that push back against any of that federal overreach. I know that, for me, I'm part of the Latino Democratic Caucus and members of Color Caucus, and some of us we have regular meetings with our Attorney General to kind of discuss both what he's seeing at the federal level that we can support with, and it does give us some information on what we may be seeing, so we can prepare a little bit more and communicate with, with our districts. It is pretty critical for us to remain vigilant as much as possible, although it is very difficult, right? Because the federal government, one day they're attacking this group, another day they're attacking this funding, another day they're making another bad decision. So although difficult, we are in pretty constant communication also with our congressional delegation. I know that Congressman Rick Larson provides us with information as often as possible. And just this week, I think on Monday, we had Patty Murray here, and she gave us a good amount of information that, was informative, and I think is going to educated us a little bit more on what we need to prepare for. So again, although it's difficult because we don't have oversight directly of some of the government actions that are being taken, we are working closely with those that do, and hearing from you is incredibly valuable because we can communicate that directly to them. So thank you for that.
Representative Mary Fosse here. I just got to say that, I share your concerns with what's going on at the federal level, and it's more important than ever right now that we really prioritize state efforts to protect our neighbors from discrimination and unequal treatment, and protecting our values and reproductive rights, civil rights, et cetera. All of our priorities that makes Washington State a place where people want to live. And I know it's really frustrating and scary right now for a lot of folks. And we hear from constituents with all of these concerns. We are looking at that kind of multi-pronged approach of what do we do in instances where our funding is cut off, and what are we going to do, if these things come down the pipeline. And we have put things in place in the past and currently where we're working on the Keep Washington Working Act and the follow-up bill to that. And we've been banning private detention facilities, and there's a multitude of different things that we have been doing to make sure that we are advocating for our residents and our state, and ensuring that if funding is cut off at the state level, that we have appropriate reserves to keep us going while we deal with whatever the heck they're doing. So thank you for raising this, and please keep telling your stories to us and your congressional representatives, because that really helps.
Thank you. Okay, next, David, who has I think he just wants to say thanks. Hey, David, can you hear me?
Yes, Senator Robinson and Representative Fosse and Representative Cortes. I just want to let you know I'm doing okay, and I'm glad that you guys are down in Olympia fighting for the 38th legislative district. From time to time when I was down there, one of the things that I always wanted to do is to hear somebody from our 38th district while I was serving down there. And from time to time, you guys got a couple more weeks to go. I just want to thank what a great job you guys are doing, and just to say hello.
Thank you, David.
Appreciate you, David. Thanks for the work you're doing in Port of Everett.
Oh, no, and one question I do have right off the top of my tongue is that when you talk about apprenticeship program and jobs for our youth up here, and the bills that you still have in the hopper that talk about the apprenticeship program, just remember the 38th legislative district.
Always.
Thanks, David. Appreciate you. I'll have to come visit you this weekend with the kids.
Whoops. Okay, sorry about that. I'm sorry, David. Okay. So, all right. Okay. We have Darlene on the phone. Darlene, can you hear me? You had a question about healthcare?
Yes, and I would just first like to echo to Representative Fosse, Representative Cortes, and Senator Robinson. Thank you for all you do. I know you have big shoulders, and we all count on you and appreciate everything you do. My question is about universal health care. It's my understanding that whole Washington has presented a bill, and it is now in committee. And, of course, we would really like to see it voted on. Can you tell us where we are with that and if you'll be voting for that?
Do you know what the bill is, Darlene?
I do not. I don't have that bill number with me.
What does the bill, what would it do?
It would provide universal health care for residents of Washington State.
I don't think that
Is it
made it out of committee.
Is it a joint resolution, do you think, to Congress?
Oh, so, okay, let's move past that. Can you tell me your view on universal health care? Let's go with that question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, this is Senator Robinson. Universal health care is, I think, what many people want. It's very challenging as a state to get to true universal health care. I'm very proud of the work we've done over the time I've been in the legislature to expand access to health care for Washingtonians. You know, we've put a lot of things in place, starting with Medicaid expansion back after the Affordable Care Act passed, and then we stood up our own health benefit exchange here in Washington State to allow people to buy affordable health care for their families. We provide state subsidies as well as federal subsidies, which honestly are at great risk with the federal administration, but that's for people who buy on the exchange. And then last year we were able to expand to allow a number of people who, due to their citizenship status, are not eligible for Medicaid, but they were able to, we were able to provide a health care option for those folks as well. So we've really created a lot of different strategies here in Washington State to allow almost all of our residents to have access to health care. That still is not enough. Many people find that the health care options that are out there are not affordable for them and their families, and that's why I continue to work on health care affordability. Unfortunately, that's just a really hard topic to make a lot of progress on, but we're continuing to work on that. We really need our federal partners to join in with the states around options for universal health care, and that will just continue to take citizens like yourself advocating and pressing and pushing until we can get there.
Representative Mary Fosse here. You'll see on 1445 in the House that both of your state reps signed on to this, both myself and Rep. Cortes, because we support it. It didn't make it out of the Healthcare Committee, unfortunately, which I don't sit on the Healthcare Committee, and so I unfortunately couldn't vote for it out of committee, and we can't vote for it on the floor if it doesn't get past that. It is a big policy that I hope that we can figure out a way to get to that, because it would change lives. It's especially hard to do it when we're looking at crunching numbers in a really, really tough budget year, even more so than a regular year. So I'm hoping that we can get to a place where our colleagues see the value in it as much as, this delegation does. But I'm going to hand it over to my seatmate over here. He has something to say as well.
Yeah, and thanks for bringing this up. I think this is definitely a topic that I've heard pretty consistently over the last couple of years too. And I would absolutely be a supporter of universal health care at the national level. I hope that's where we can get to. And like Senator Robinson said, we are working quite hard to make sure that we can include and allow as many folks as possible here in the state to have access to affordable health care. I think one of the things that I consistently see is that, a lot of our families are a paycheck away from losing their homes or not being able to put food on their table, but also they're an medical emergency away from not being able to pay rent and put food on their table. So I see it as something that's a right for Washingtonians. I see it as a right for at a national level, and I hope that we can get there at some point. So, I'm supportive here of anything we can do to, again, give as much access as possible to affordable health care to as many people as possible, and hope that we can see that at a national level at some point for sure, too.
Thank you. Let's see. Next up, we have Dan, who has a question about cuts. Hi, Dan.
Thanks. I appreciate it, and thanks to all three of our elected representatives. We appreciate not only the work you do in Olympia, but taking time for this town hall. So we're told the state budget shortfall is some $12 billion. And not to sound cynical, but the legislature didn't run of that kind of red ink lavishing compensation on state employees like myself. So here's my question. What allocations or projects comprise that $12 billion? And shouldn't budget cuts focus on those projects first instead of punishing state employees with layoffs, furloughs, and agency closures?
Well, thank you. This is Senator Robinson. Thank you for your service as a state employee. I think it's fair to say all of us value our state employees. You know, there's no one project or even a handful of projects, as you point out, that are responsible for the budget deficit that we're facing right now. It's really a combination of many different factors that just kind of all came together at the same time. It's less revenue than we projected. We're very dependent on sales tax in our state, and we just aren't seeing as much sales tax as we anticipated. It is rising costs, just like every household. The state also is faced with inflationary pressures, and everything costs more. That's been a significant driver of these issues. And then, you know, some of the things that we've put into place to protect and support Washingtonians, things like the Working Families Tax Credit, Washington College Grant for people who want to attend our state colleges or pursue their careers in some way and with higher ed. Our Working Connections Child Care program that supports low-income families with child care. All of those programs just have seen a huge increase in the number of people who are accessing those programs. So you will see, when budgets come out next week, you will see reductions across all of those programs. So it's certainly not, we're not targeting state employees specifically. We are asking all state agencies and programs to, you know, to take a small portion of the overall reductions.
Yeah, Dan, and you know, I think Senator Robinson really summarized it all very, very well. But I wanted to add, you know, that's why our progressive revenue package that will be coming out too is going to be critically important, because, you know, like I said a little bit early on the call, it is going to help to get us out of the situation that we're in right now. But that revenue will maintain, that will stay there, and it's going to allow us to, you know, then reinvest back into systems and programs that are addressing issues that our most vulnerable populations are facing, and hopefully also help us to ensure that our state employees are getting paid a thriving wage. So, you know, these cuts are going to be very difficult for all of us to take in. It's going to be a heartbreaking couple of years for us because of the situation that we're in now. But, you know, this progressive revenue, I hope that, you know, folks understand how it's going to last us and help us kind of correct that upside-down tax code that we have at the moment.
Representative Mary Fosse here. I agree with what my colleagues have contributed to this question. Thanks, Dan, for asking it. I think that furloughs would be my last go-to as far as trying to make cuts across the board. There are going to be difficult cuts that we have to make, whether we have revenue options or not. It's just that without those revenue options, it's going to be extremely dire. So making sure that we can find progressive revenue options that do not fall on the backs of like the working class would be ideal in having the least amount of impact for those that need services, for those that still need those employment opportunities to be able to contribute back to our economy. Because if we're going to make furloughs and cuts, we're going to increase the demand for the services that is already there. And I've seen like with the cuts and everything that's going on at the federal level, and we really need to shore up all of our defenses and the work that we're doing here in Washington State. And so I think that we should prioritize our workers first.
Okay, thank you. We have about, 2 minutes left of this call, so let's hurry up. I'm going to tell you the results of the poll. 47% of you say that The issue that most affects your daily life is the cost of basic needs. Then 25 say the cost of housing. 18 of you say education funding. And 11% of you say transportation. And now we're going to go to closing remarks really quickly. Let's start with the senator.
Well, thank you for joining us this evening. It's been wonderful to hear your concerns, hear what you're thinking about, and to be able to respond. I hope that you have learned something, and it's so important that we hear from the people that we represent. Obviously, that's our job. So please continue to stay involved. You can email us at any time about any of your concerns as we continue on through the rest of this legislative session. Have a good evening.
Representative Mary Fosse here. I think that poll is pretty accurate on a lot of the responses we've heard from the constituents. Right now, it's just we have extreme income and wealth inequality in this state, and it's really, really impacting us, and it's a struggle to get by. So we are going to be prioritizing people's basic needs in the upcoming budget, and we need to be hearing your stories, and we need to be hearing from you on things that you're concerned about or things you want us to support. Please contact our offices, and then also relay your stories to our federal representatives as well as the governor's office.
Great. This is Representative Julio Cortes. So, echoing my colleagues, I want to thank all of you for taking the time this evening to speak with us and listen to us. It's something that it goes a long way for all of us. We can't do this job without you. So, please stay connected with all of us. These next couple of years, like I said, are going to be very difficult for our state, but this is the time that we need to come together as a community and make sure that we are fighting and rowing in the same direction. So thank you all for your time, and have a great night.